The past recent years, we've been seeing a trend of mergers and acquisitions within the tech industry. These mergers and acquisitions apparently benefit companies at the expense of healthy competition, consumers' privacy and labor's rights, and the urgency to innovate. This looks like Tokopedia and Gojek merging into Goto, integrating their shipping process, Facebook buying Instagram, centralizing their users' database, and Google buying YouTube. How do mergers and acquisitions work? Number one, it can work in a form of a bigger company buying smaller company, or two big companies merging into one, or owning the majority of a company's shares, merging their operations, centralizing their control and database. This house, as an average reasonable person, should evaluate the motion within the current context. Therefore, we should not talk about the alternative solutions or possible proposals to fix this issue, as it is outside of our agencies. Two arguments that I'm going to talk about. Number one, why mergers and acquisitions within the tech industry are unjustified. And secondly, how mergers and acquisitions directly harm consumers and laborers. First argument, why it's unjustified. Firstly, it limits consumers' ability to exercise privacy. When mergers and acquisitions happen, both companies have access to each other's database. When the merger happens, number one, you don't consent to expose your data to the merged or new acquired companies. This looks like WhatsApp being acquired by Facebook, and there's a scandal because Facebook tried to change WhatsApp terms and privacies. But secondly, even if you consent, the quality of consent is hampered by external factors, such as you are not fully informed because the terms and services are very long and wordy, and it makes you confused and makes the users confused. But secondly, you are forced to consent because there's peer pressure. Most of your families and friends uses Facebook and Instagram or Google, and also you rely on the platforms to fulfill your daily needs like communication using Facebook and WhatsApp, and you buy groceries with Gojek, and you entertain yourself with YouTube. This results in privacy enrichment that looks like, number one, selling your data to the advertisers, but secondly, controlling and purchasing your habits. Goto might make you purchase things in Tokopedia and ship it with Gojek to increase their profits, or advertisers looking at your private messages on Instagram and using that to advertise the things you're talking about on Facebook, or Facebook and Instagram having access to your mic might able to listen to you and what you talk about right now, and the advertisement might come up later in their in the page. Without acquisitions, privacy infringement might already happen, but the mergers and acquisitions worsen the widespread and it's bigger in magnitude, and therefore there are more victims who fall into this privacy infringement. But second, why it's unjustified. It takes away acquired companies' freedom. It happens when bigger companies acquire smaller companies. That creates power imbalance. It's a form of CEO and stronger stakeholders in the company, which is more likely to be interested in profit at the expense of the user's privacy. Therefore, the decision-making in acquired companies are hampered by the limitations given by the parent company. This looks on Facebook bought WhatsApp that promotes security, but Facebook exploits privacy. Therefore, when they try to change the terms and services, it's going to create a backlash within the users of WhatsApp. For those two reasons, mergers and acquisitions are unjust. The second argument, how mergers and acquisitions directly harm consumers. The mergers and acquisitions happen for three reasons. Number one, companies want to directly eliminate their competitors efficiently. This looks like Facebook by Instagram. If Instagram have to compete with Facebook, Facebook have to innovate new products to gain interest from Instagram users, and the other way around. This is expensive for three reasons. Number one, it is time consuming. Secondly, the research and development is complicated and hard. And thirdly, you have to pay more workers and more hours for workers to create new things. Moreover, it's also expensive for Instagram to compete against Facebook. Therefore, it's better to make a deal compared to having to compete with a giant social media company. But secondly, companies want a wider access and range to more consumers. In status quo, Facebook ads in Instagram telling you to use Facebook proves to you that Facebook wants everyone to use Facebook, even in Instagram or other social media platforms. Therefore, they are able to integrate Instagram DMs with Facebook Messenger, making it easier for advertisers to see your messages. But thirdly, they want to increase their valuation and appeal to bigger investors. This was proved by Goto appealing to the US investors and not just Indonesian or Asian investors right after they announced to the public that they have been merged. When that happens, it creates less incentive for companies to improve. Why? Because there's no other companies that are able to be comparatively more advantageous than their company in their market. This means that these companies are the dominant companies that control the entire market segmentation. This results in two things. Number one, it harms consumers because one, it eliminates options for the consumers. Users can simply change to other platforms because most of their peers are using Facebook Messenger instead of WeChat. Because when you talk in WeChat, therefore, your friend might not have WeChat. Even if users opt out of these company services, the companies still have a massive amount of users tolerating the awful service. But secondly, the consumer then relies on one product. Merged companies can mark down their prices in order to outcompete independent companies, so consumers buy products from merged companies instead, or merged companies even provide free products, and that's why they're merged. When users shift to use merged companies, other relatively smaller platforms need to mark up their prices, making it less appealing to consumers, and therefore, then it's not appealing to investors too. When this cycle happens, consumer relies on merged companies for their daily needs, as the bigger companies are the ones who are able to provide cheaper products when the investors are investing to them as opposed to the independent companies. But secondly, this also harms workers because in the tech industry, companies rely on investors to mark down their prices and make products free or cheap. When investment is limited, because only the appealing companies get investors, because they're acquired, they have a unique combination and functionality like Goto, and makes it look promising, labor violation will become worse. Because when Goto violates labor rights, workers can simply shift to other tech companies. Why? Because investment goes to Goto. It's less likely for other individual companies to hire more workers. Therefore, worker rely its job on these merged companies such as Tokopedia and Gojek combined. Why is this bad? Number one, this maintains bad services and products. For example, the problematic algorithm within Facebook and the labor violations within Gojek. But secondly, it promotes a decrease of competition, which is the key to incentivize companies to improve and innovate their products in order to outcompete each other. But thirdly, it eliminates options for consumers. If mergers and acquisitions don't happen, these companies are more likely to innovate in order to be superior to their competitors. The benefits are twofold. Number one, consumers have more options if one company or platform violates their privacy or other issues. Therefore, they don't have to rely on just one product, and therefore the users are more diversified, then they can pick and choose which application or platforms are better for them, making competition more tight, making platforms trying to innovate and improve their application and platforms as much as possible to maintain their users to use their application. But secondly, it is to appeal to laborers to work with them by saying that my company is not violating your rights. Therefore, for all these reasons, we're proud to propose.